Welcome to Thursday's edition of COVID-19. We're looking at a relentless rise in our daily tally with more than 700 new infections today. Now, this persistent trend comes amid cases of no-shows for vaccination appointments, further complicating matters for healthcare authorities across the globe. We start now with the broader pandemic coverage with our Kwon So-ah. So then, do start us off.
Sunny, we're seeing the highest number of cases, of daily cases that is, in around 2 weeks. 715 cases were reported this Thursday. That's 80 more cases compared to yesterday. And that has also brought the number of domestic transmissions to close to 700. Now, in the past 3 days, we are seeing a steady rise here in infections since Monday, that is. And with that, the average number of daily cases is at around the high 500s, with the average in domestic cases in the past week standing at 561. And with that, Korea is approaching 130,000 cases in total, but also the number of full recoveries is close to 120,000. And if we go over to our map now, the capital Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province have a similar number of cases this Thursday, above 200, and also most of the nation is seeing at least double-digit figures. The country is dealing with infections at multiple daily settings, with a fourth wave of the virus showing no signs of waning as of yet. And the thing is that not only densely populated regions at social distancing level 2, but also less affected regions are seeing new cases that have been easing restrictions. Now, one such region, the city of Suncheon in Jeollanam-do province, southwest of the country, decided to raise its social distancing level back to 2 on Thursday, following an emergency meeting held over a worrying new cluster infection. As of 11 a.m. Thursday, COVID-19 cases linked to a nightclub in that city have risen to 30 after 4 nightclub workers and 1 family member were confirmed earlier this week. Now, nightlife entertainment venues will now be suspended, and a ban on private gatherings of 5 or more people will again take effect. And now let's get an update on the vaccination numbers. We've got at least 3.7 million people around the country who have received at least 1 dose of the vaccination. Our Kim Jae-hee will have more updates on the vaccines in a bit.
Right, she will. And staying with vaccinations, so the U.S. has broadened its campaign to include more children, I hear.
Right, Sunny. The CDC is recommending vaccination for children aged 12 to 15. So this regarding the Pfizer vaccine, with inoculations for this age group to kick off as early as Thursday local time. But some states have already started their inoculation program for kids following the FDA's approval earlier this week. Now let's take a look at the numbers around the world. The U.S. here at 33.5 million is reporting some 36,000 new cases in the past day, but 10 times that amount in India at 23.7 million has reported over 360,000 new infections. Also, Brazil here at 15.3 million is still reporting over 70,000 cases on a daily basis, and Argentina and Colombia are other places in Latin America that are still reporting over 10,000 cases every day. And the total number of cases around the world stands at 161 million. And those are the updates I have for now. I'll see you back after the government briefing. Sunny?
All right, so thank you for that. Right, vaccine shipments appear to be arriving as promised by officials here to ensure that Korea's inoculation drive stays on track. I have Kim Jae-hee here in the studio with details on that. Welcome, Jae.
Good afternoon, Sunny.
Right, so our vaccination campaign is moving as scheduled.
Well, government officials are counting on the large shipments of vaccines set to arrive in the coming weeks to boost the country's immunization drive. Earlier on Wednesday, an additional 438,000 Pfizer doses arrived in the nation. And later on this Thursday, 835,000 AstraZeneca doses will be delivered through the COVAX facility. By the end of June, more than 7 million AstraZeneca doses and 5 million Pfizer doses will have been delivered to Korea. Authorities say there will be enough for Korea to meet its target of 13 million first injections by the first half of the year. The country also began taking reservations for AstraZeneca vaccinations on Thursday for those aged from 60 to 64. People in this age bracket will start receiving their first shots on June 7th. This is the final phase of the three-stage registration program for seniors aged 60 to 74. Vaccine registration will also be open to preschool teachers and elementary school instructors who teach first and second graders starting this Thursday. Now, those eligible can sign up online through the KDCA's website or their call center by dialing 1339. On Friday, the country will begin rolling out second shots of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Those under the age 30 who received their first jabs before vaccinations were suspended for that age group will also be eligible for the second shots should they choose to receive it.
I see. Jay, what can you tell us about our rate of vaccine uptake?
Well, so far, around 7.2% of the population have received their first dose so far. Now, in the previous 2 rounds of bookings for the 2 most senior age groups that began tests last week, more than 51% of those aged 70 to 74 and over 38% of those aged 65 to 69 signed up for the vaccinations. Authorities are renewing their calls on the public to join their vaccination drive.
Vaccine reservations for those aged 60 to 64 begins on Thursday. The rate of adverse reactions stands at only 0.1%, with most of them involving fever and muscle pain. So we urge all members of the public to get vaccinated.
Meanwhile, Jay, I hear authorities are also looking to ease COVID-19 prevention measures come July.
That's right. Health authorities announced on Wednesday that they're planning to ease social distancing measures starting this July near the end of Korea's first inoculations for seniors aged 60 and above.
We are preparing to roll out a new and relaxed set of social distancing measures starting July, after reviewing the COVID-19 situation in June and taking into account various feedback.
The senior health official also added that should the number of daily cases stabilize, the government might lift its gathering ban before July. But he also noted it's still too early to discuss whether it's safe right now to allow gatherings of 5 or more people who have all been vaccinated. Looking ahead to these changes, the Education Ministry said on Wednesday that it's planning to fully resume in-person classes for kindergartens, elementary, middle, and high schools at the start of the next semester, which is due to begin in September.
One final question, Jay, before you go. I understand the corporate sector is also doing its part to boost COVID-19 inoculation.
Yes, you're right. Samsung Electronics and LG Group announced on Wednesday that it'll provide paid leaves for its employees who choose to get COVID-19 vaccinations. Samsung Electronics employees will get a day off on the day of the vaccination and up to 2 more days if they experience any after effects. The announcement came 1 day after the tech giant's labor union demanded 3 days of paid leave for vaccinated workers. Shortly after Samsung's announcement, LG Group also said their workers will be given days off for COVID-19 vaccinations. SK Group and Hyundai Motor Group are also said to be moving similar measures.
I see. All right, Jay, thank you very much for the coverage.
Thank you for having me.
Right, it's time now for the regular briefing on the COVID-19 situation here in Korea for this Thursday. Authorities are urging against non-essential gatherings as daily cases mark a persistent rise this week. There have also been renewed calls for COVID-19 testings to stem potential cluster infections. And do remember to keep your face masks on at all times when outside of your homes to limit possible exposure to the virus. Now, while we wait for the briefing to start, here are a few words related to... No, I've heard that the briefing's about to start. We'll come back to you afterwards.
Before today's briefing, we have Commissioner Chung Eun-young, who will be explaining us about the COVID-19 vaccinations, and we will also have related presentations that follow suit. And after that, we also have some questions that have been received by the members of the public. First of all, here is Commissioner Chung Eun-young. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Commissioner Chung Eun-young of the KDCA, and let us now begin our regular briefing for May 13th. 15th. Starting from today, we are receiving the bookings for COVID-19 vaccination appointments for those aged between 60 and 64. And until yesterday, we have about 51% of the eligible group within the 70 and 74, and also about 38% between the groups of 65 and 69 have completed their bookings. And also, we start the bookings for the vaccine appointments for those aged between 60 and 64, which is starting from today. So we ask for the children of the senior citizens to help your parents, that is, to get the bookings. And you could also do so online. And regardless of your registration address, you can also pick any COVID-19 designated hospitals. And next, we also have some updates on the vaccination supplies. And today, under the COVAX facility, AstraZeneca vaccines, about 835,000 of them are scheduled to arrive. And tomorrow also, AstraZeneca vaccines, about 520,000 will arrive tomorrow as well. And we have in schedule to have about 720,000 doses to arrive in the near future as well. And we also have the Pfizer vaccines to arrive as well. And with these doses that will arrive in Korea, we will carry out the vaccination rollout in June and also in May. And today we will be inviting some experts to solve any curiosities regarding the vaccination for the senior citizens. First of all, we would like to provide you some updates regarding the materials that we have provided, and we also will invite the experts for detailed explanation. First of all, here is a brief overview of the COVID-19 vaccination. As we heard, the Commissioner Chung Eun-kyung will be briefing us on the efficacy of the vaccines. Especially for those over the age of 60, we have some updates on the figures for the vaccines' efficacy. And please note that as for these groups of people aged over the age of 60, the COVID-19 is more dangerous and risky. So it is a very good idea to protect yourself with the vaccination. And we see that out of the total infections, we have about 27% of the infections that are aged over the age of 60. However, on the other hand, when we look at the fatalities, we have about 9.5 out of every 10 people who passed away due to the COVID-19. And the graph also shows the remarkable high level of fatality rate among those aged over the age of 80. And the fatality rate stands at above 18%. So this is a very fatal disease for those aged over the age of 80. And also about 5.77% fatality rate has been reported among those in the age group of 70 as well. And as for the people aged over 60, we have about 1% fatality rate. So we can say that the senior citizens above the age of 60, as for these group, the vaccination is very crucial to protect your health and also to protect your life as well. So it is very important. And moving on, the vaccination is very effective in preventing the infections and also lowering the fatality rate. And here in South Korea, we see that the rollout of the vaccines are being carried out. And we have seen some analysis on how well the vaccinations can prevent the infections and also how effective the vaccine is as for those who have already been receiving the vaccines. And even if they have just received one dose, we saw that there is a decline of more than 89.5% of the decrease in the risks of infection. And also this is higher for Pfizer vaccine. It stands about 92.8% and 86.3% for AstraZeneca vaccines. And we say that if you are completely immunized through the two doses, we believe that you could be even more protective against the virus. And we believe that the figures could also be subject to change depending on the period of time. And also, if you have received at least one dose of the vaccines, you could prevent the fatalities as well. We have 0 cases of reports of the fatalities reported on the people who have received the vaccines. So it is very crucial that you receive the vaccines. And we will also invite Seo Eun-suk professor who will be explaining us about the risks and the safety of the vaccination. We have Seo Eun-suk, a professor from Suncheon University. Good afternoon, I am Seo Eun-suk. So moving on to the next slide, COVID-19 vaccination, we are rolling out the vaccines to about 164 countries nationwide, and they have been administered in many countries around the world, that is. And also in about 149 countries, the AstraZeneca vaccines have been approved, and the Pfizer vaccines has been approved by 93 countries, including Israel and the US. And moving on to the next slide, in South Korea, we have seen the adverse responses after the inoculation, and the levels are very similar to that of others. In Europe, we have about 1.9% to about 0.2%, and the Korea, we have about 0.5% rate. And we see that the fatality out of every 10,000, we have about 0.2, while it is also similar to other countries with like Europe, which has similar to about 0.2 to 1. And as for the adverse responses, you are very curious about how they are assessed. Here are the procedures. And the reports can be done by doctors or the recipient of the vaccines or their guardians. And second, we have the local authorities that carry out the basic assessment. So we look at the severity of the symptoms like adverse responses, including the severe symptoms or even death. So we have our independent panel of experts who look at these cases, and they see whether there is a causality with the vaccines. And these data are accumulated, and we carry out these in detailed screening, and we have the damage screening team which looks over these cases in depth. And our experts, a panel of experts, include those clinical doctors who are in the fields of vaccinations and also emerging infectious diseases and so forth. And we also have more wide range of the experts, about 15 of them who are in the damage screening team of the vaccinations, and they have abundant amount of expertise and experience in dealing with these adverse responses to vaccinations. And we also have lawyers, attorneys who are working with us, and we have also medical doctors and experts who actually look at the autopsy as well. So these are the experts, and we also have professors in the related fields, and we also have the people who are in charge and experts of vaccinations as well as drugs. And also we have the experts on from diverse circles of these related aspects. So we have this wide range team that has been composed of these experts. And about 99.8% had no adverse responses against the COVID-19 vaccines, and we have about 0.2% they have reported, and about 91.6% of them had mild symptoms like fever or light headache. And also, moving on to the next slide. As for the citizens above the age of 60, we have been looking at these adverse responses, and we have been looking at their analysis. And compared to the age group of those aged over the 60 and the general public, there has been no significant differences or comparisons. So we have about 16 the lung diseases, as you can see on the slide, and we also have pneumonia, 7 cases, and a stroke, like 8 cases. And also we have seen a stroke of about 26 cases, and also pneumonia of 3 cases. And as you see in this slide, as you look at these cases, we say that on average, we have 600 seniors who pass away on a daily basis. And looking at these average deaths of the seniors, we do not see a significant causal relationship with the COVID-19 vaccines. And next, after the inoculation of the COVID-19, we have been looking at the cases of death that have been reported. And there were also some 2 cases that we would like to elaborate. And we have been looking at the casualties of the vaccines and the death. And before that, I would like to extend our deepest condolences to those who have passed away. And we have been looking at the causal relationship between the vaccines and these deaths that have been reported. And proving the causality itself is a very difficult and challenging task. And we are also exerting our full efforts to provide you with most scientific and fair judgment. And the first case was a woman in her 80s. This person had high blood pressure, and this person had also experienced high blood pressure after the inoculation of the Pfizer vaccines. And as mentioned, she could move around on her own. However, we see that this person did not have any medical illnesses or underlying medical illnesses. However, we have seen that there has been a damage of the brain vessels, and we see that this has been contributed to her death. And the second case was a male in his 50s, and this person was injected with the AstraZeneca vaccines, and 2 days later experienced chest pain. And we had the autopsy, and we say that there has been a damage in the heart, and this has been the reason for the death. And so these 2 cases, we will be reviewing the autopsy once again. So that concludes my presentation.
Right, there was Thursday's afternoon briefing, so with a detailed presentation on our COVID-19 vaccination process.
Yes, the regular briefing is focusing on an assessment of the country's vaccination campaign so far. And Jung Eun-kyung, the commissioner of the KDC, especially stressed the importance of seniors getting vaccinated, calling for cooperation from citizens to, help seniors with their registration for the vaccination. And she gave some numbers saying how much the fatality rate is high among seniors, while we have around 27% of people aged 65 and above account for the total number of infections in Korea. That's roughly 3 out of 10. But when it comes to fatalities, that's 9 out of 10 in that senior age group. So that is why this vaccination is important, and especially because the adverse reactions account for just some 0.2%. So really, the positive, the benefits outnumber the risks. So that was the gist of the briefing so far.
I see. All right, so thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
Right, campus closures and the shift to remote learning amid the pandemic have sparked calls for refunds from university students, with some choosing to file lawsuits. We have more on the legal dispute in this report.
On May 6th, the Seoul Central District Court held its first hearing on a class action suit filed by university students demanding refunds under tuition over major disruptions to the school curriculum brought on by COVID-19. The controversy first began more than a year ago, after most universities shut down their campuses and switched to remote learning amid the pandemic.
서버가 터져서 학생들이 피해를 보거나 이런 상황들도 많았고, 그리고 원래는 이제 교수자분이 수업을 하시던 그런 방식이었었는데 PDF 파일로 대체가 된다던가 아니면 온라인 강의가 재탕하는 경우들도 굉장히 많았었습니다. 그리고 아무래도 도서관이나 실험 장비 이런 것들을 사용하고 있었는데 그런 것들을 전혀 이제 체감할 수 없는 상황이다 보니 학생들 입장에서 당연히 등록금 반환이 필요하다라고 느낄 수밖에 없었던 것 같습니다.
The student demands prompted an immediate response from universities as well as the government. Last October, the National Assembly passed a new motion to amend the country's laws on higher education, recommending universities to consider tuition refunds in case of a disaster scenario that disrupts normal school operations. Some universities reimbursed their students in the form of special grants, but it was not enough to satiate the students' demands.
등록금 반환이라는 명칭으로 이루어진 게 아니라 코로나19 특별 장학금이라는 다소 시혜적인 태도로서 이제 반환이 이루어졌다고 생각을 하고, 네, 이러한 대학의 태도는 곧 온라인 수업이 교육 환경을 보장하지 못했다는 것을 인정하지 못하는 약간 책임 회피성 태도라든지 추후에 더 개선의 여지가 없다는 것을 보여준다고 생각을 합니다.
On the flip side, universities say they're facing an enormous financial strain amid the pandemic due to the added cost of creating a virtual learning environment.
지난 13년 동안 등록금이 동결되어서 사립대학은 많은 대학들이 적자에 허덕이고 있죠. 그래서 그걸 메꾸기 위해서 인건비 삭감, 그 외에 재투자할 여력은 전혀 없는 상황입니다. 추가적인 수입원이었던 이제 외국인 학생들, 코로나 때문에 거의 들어오지 못하고 있죠. 그래서 그러한 문제들이 겹쳐서 재정 적자가 더 악화되고 있는 실정입니다.
Tuition fee controversies have also been lit up in other countries around the world. More than 300 lawsuits have been filed by students and parents in the U.S., demanding refunds on their tuition.
Students felt as if their online experience was not comparable to their in-person experience and felt that the cost for the tuition that they were paying needed to be reduced because they were having less services, they were at home, they weren't experiencing campus life, and felt as if there was a cost differential that should be reduced for them so that they could, because of the pandemic.
With the impact of the pandemic still being felt throughout the education sector, how must students and universities work to solve this dispute?
비대면 강의 문제는 질이 문제인 것 같습니다. 그래서 질을 높여주고 앞으로 이렇게 이제 대학 교육도 바뀌어갈 텐데요. 변화하는 환경에서 거기에 맞추어서 강의를 해나간다면 학생들의 만족도도 과거보다 오히려 더 높아질 수 있다고 생각합니다.
재정 문제는 사실 법인과 대학만이 이제 담당하기는 좀 어려운 부분입니다. 그래서 좀 국회와 교육부가 관련 논의를 좀 진행을 하여 대학생들에 대한 고민을 좀 공감해 주시고 뭐 자구책을 마련하는 대학에 대해서 지원금 마련이 좀 확충이 되어야 대학도 그렇고 학생들도 그렇고 교육자와 피교육자가 모두 만족하는 좀 더 숨통 트이는 대학 생활이 될 것 같습니다.
Amid the still ongoing disruptions in education due to COVID-19, the challenges being faced by students and institutions alike have only just begun.
접종 일정 변경으로 개봉한 백신의 잔여량은 폐기되는 것을 방지하기 위해서 접종 기관이 예비 접종 대상자를 적극 활용하여 접종을 시행하고 있습니다.
Vaccine safety concerns have led to no-shows for inoculation appointments, and this trend in turn is creating fresh obstacles to be tackled by healthcare officials. I have Dr. Kim Seung-taek from Institute Pasteur Korea. Welcome back, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
And joining us virtually is Dr. Malina OSMAN at University Putra, Malaysia. Pleasure to have you with us, Dr. OSMAN.
Yeah, thank you for having me for discussion.
Right. Dr. Kim, then let's start with the problems resulting from no-shows for vaccination appointments.
Well, I think most of the countries, and even just we are actually suffering from the vaccine shortages. So just wasting this very precious the vaccine is a really serious concern. And I think this wasted vaccine probably could have saved the people from a severe disease or even from death. And these vaccines, depending on what type of just the vaccines, actually the shelf life is quite different. And then the storage condition and the shelf life is different once it is just moved to some refrigerator or like room temperatures. But the concern is that once it is open, this has to be just used in the same day. So that's why we are just talking about some no-show and then just considering any other measures to just to bring just people to the vaccine center to not to waste any just potential just the vaccines, just the doses we have.
Right. Dr. Osman, are authorities in Malaysia also facing similar problems?
For your information, currently we are intensively ongoing for campaigning for the vaccination program, even though at the initial stage we found that not many as expected to register in the program, but now it has taken up some of those seats for the vaccination. And for your information, so far we are in the phase 2 where it has already involved the frontliners in the first one, and it still continue. And currently we are involving the elderly and those who are having underlying chronic diseases. So far, based on information, I was informed that there is not much issues with those who are not turning up for the second dose. So far, for frontliners, they are fulfilling their appointments, and we are still observing what will be the situation in the next 2 or 3 weeks from now.
I see. Dr. Osman, I understand it's too early to say, but have there been any reports of perhaps severe post-inoculation adverse reactions in Malaysia?
So far, the post-inoculation just similar like what being reported, the adverse effect post-immunization, the one that usually being reported, those who have been said to be linked with the vaccination so far have not been proven. So the way we perceive it, there is no such severe complications reported, and the vaccinations have been run as smooth as we hope.
I see. Dr. Kim, now instead of simply discarding the no-show doses, authorities here are allowing them to be administered, that is, on registered volunteers who can show up on that particular day. So how do you sign up for these no-show vaccines?
I think as of now, just the individual vaccine centers or just the hospital, just receiving some like phone calls and then the reservation from based on some individual basis. But I think this is kind of just I think the second best option. But I think the first option is that the person who are actually assigned for this the vaccine schedule should get the shot first, because this is the way we can actually somehow relieve the potential burden of just healthcare systems. Whether if the group of people got just infected, those actually just impose a substantial burden on the public healthcare system. So it is very important to get those people get shot. But the second the option is to just not to waste any of the vaccines left over.
Right. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, Dr. Osman, I understand authorities have made the AstraZeneca vaccine optional amid safety concerns. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Okay, for your information, we found that this group who provide some of those opinion against the vaccine actually is a very small proportion. And then we found that those who are in the social media, the population in social media, very much different compared to those who are in the the real world. So majority of us actually looking forward to get the vaccine. Even so, we look at all those comment provide opinion, which they say that they are not keen for the vaccine because of all those side effects. But as a matter of fact, majority of us Malaysians looking forward to get all those vaccines, and then this is proven by the situation where they need less than few hours before the registration being closed for the AstraZeneca. So I think in general, actually, there is not much issue related to the vaccine. It's just that some of those perhaps confused and all those poor perception related to all those scientific information. If we can, increase all those promotion to provide the accurate information, I think it should not be a problem for us here.
I see. Dr. Osman, do you believe that authorities in Malaysia perhaps then providing members of the public with the accurate or transparent information to boost inoculation in the country?
Yeah, so far I agree because of all those information being translated into what they have briefed us as well as what they have practiced. So far, when they provide us all those information, it is in line with all the scientific findings as well as what we should understand based on being documented and reported. And all those information being communicated to us in very much transparent way, and then most of us understand it well, but we have, like some other countries who are against this vaccination program and continuously provide some information which is very much what I can call as weird opinion, which is very much not tally with the scientific findings. So far, I think based on the perception and acceptance, most of us looking forward to get this vaccine.
Right. Dr. Kim, back here in Korea, I understand there is growing interest, public interest that is, in no-show vaccines. What do you suppose is fueling this interest?
Well, I think obviously there are some people actually concerned about some potential side effects of the vaccine, but there are other people who are very interested in the vaccination. But I think most of people probably maybe their jobs is doing some international businesses. So in their case, their job is actually somehow compelling them to get the vaccine as soon as possible to just facilitate their businesses. Another potential the group of people is that the people who want to just go abroad for just traveling. So I think those are the two the groups. But other than that, maybe some other people might be just interested in some incentives just suggested by the governments, like no self-quarantine after the very close contact with the confirmed cases of the COVID-19. So they might just affect this kind of the phenomenon.
Right. An exemption from quarantine would be for those who are fully vaccinated here in the country.
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Dr. Kim, what other measures do you propose then to better address the complications arising from no-shows?
Well, I think we can think about just potentially two different ways. One is incentives and the other one is penalties. But penalty is not a good way. I mean, even for just vaccination, as far as I understand, in US, maybe we cannot just we cannot force the vaccination for the people. This is unconstitutional, at least in the US. So I think it's a good way is that just giving some incentives. And then many countries are actually trying such kind of incentives, for example, like restaurant coupon and even just like a movie ticket, and then sometimes as a cash deposit. And then we actually consider all those kind of just options that other countries are doing right now. And then maybe also just advertising, promoting some good side of the good aspect of the vaccination eventually.
Right, having a campaign then in place. Dr. Osman, what are your proposals to better deal with the practice of no-shows?
Currently, what we are doing is that because we have just finished for the frontliners, not finished yet, it is still continue, but for the elderly as well as for the next phases, they are actually preparing the reserve list as well. Yeah, meaning that for those who are unable to show during the vaccination, this reserve leave to be called. And then from time to time, they will be reminded as well. And then on top of that, in terms of storage of the vaccine, they are going to arrange accordingly so that it will be only open when they have enough people come for the vaccination. It would avoid some of those waste of the vaccine as well as to ensure that it fulfills the target during that day.
Dr. Osman, with regard to the COVID-19 situation in Malaysia, I understand a lockdown has been issued for 1 month starting yesterday. That would be Wednesday. Please tell us a bit about the third wave there and about the new restrictions in place.
Okay, currently there are a lot of opinion regarding the wave that we are facing. But in my opinion, this is the fourth wave. We just overcome the third wave recently in January and February, and then the data during that time, our active cases haven't yet reduced the baseline. It maintained at the 14,000. And yes, as for yesterday, we have 40,000, more than 40,000 of active cases. And then the order for the movement control order have been imposed, I think, since 12th May, yesterday, until another 3-4 weeks from now. And for your information, this MCO that we have named as the 3.0 version, is more stringent, even though the economic sectors are allowed to open. But this would allow some of those transmission in the field to be ceased, as well as we would like to allow our healthcare system to be function as optimum as well. Currently, the government is now preparing for another 1,000 beds, as well as the quarantine center to accommodate in case there are more cases to be detected, as well as of those new clusters. And we hope that with these current measures on the MCO 3.0 version, some of those transmission can be halted, as well as all those new clusters. And we would like to observe the reduction of the cases in the next 3 to 4 weeks from now.
Right. Meanwhile, Dr. Kim, what is the latest on the local treatment front following Celltrion's global supply of its COVID-19 antibody treatment, starting with Pakistan, I believe? When are we poised to see perhaps the second homegrown treatment?
For the second home treatment, well, a couple of companies actually tried to just apply for some conditional approval from the Korean the FDA, but then they failed somehow because they did not just demonstrate their clinical efficacy in their own clinical trials. And I think one of the reasons is that maybe the design of a clinical trial wasn't really perfect. Because somehow, just to secure some statistical power, they actually recruited many patients regardless of the any specification. I mean, in terms of, in this case, in COVID-19, it's kind of some biphasic disease, which means that it's a first phase and the second phase. First phase is generally is a viral replication phase. And the second phase is inflammatory phase. So most of the antiviral drugs would work for only just the first phase, which is antiviral, just a viral replication phase. But in the second phase, this is the inflammatory phase, the antiviral drugs that we are talking about, for even example like remdesivir, would not work very well. So in this case, some anti-inflammatory drugs, such as like a steroid, like a dexamethasone should work. And but anyway, just a couple of companies actually trying the phase 3 clinical trials. And I don't know how fast it will be done, but I expect maybe within this year. And then, but basically this is dependent on the how fast those companies actually recruiting the patients. Things that I can talk about right now is some major movement. One of the things is that under development is by the Merck and the Ridgeback Bio, and that's the sort of just a nucleoside analog. Those are some orally available drug, and this is the mechanism of action of this drug is very similar to that of remdesivir. But one of the advantages, as I told you, is oral drug. So the remdesivir, I think this is pretty just effective, but one of the caveat or disadvantage of this drug, this is injection drug. So this injection drug cannot be used for some outpatient, just the outpatient, the settings. Those things can be used only just a hospitalized patient. But as I told you earlier, this kind of a drug, this antiviral drug cannot be used. It's almost actually useless in the case of second phase of the COVID-19 disease. So if it can be administered in the earlier phase, that probably the effect should be much better. But so that's why I'm just saying maybe this specific drug orally available may be more beneficial. So the second one is this is still well the first one I talked about is currently under phase 2 and the phase 3 clinical trials, so in the global clinical trials. The second one is I think just recently Pfizer announced their own just drug discovery program. And then this drug has not really named yet officially, but there's just some kind of code name. But then they kind of revived their own drug program when actually that drug development was actually initiated when the SARS occurred in year 2003. But then they started the drug development, but then all of a sudden they stopped because there was no more SARS patient. So those kind of some sort of just a drug candidates was just stored in the shelf of their own company. But then now this SARS-2, I mean the COVID-19 just broke out, so that they try to just revive their drug program, and then they start with the in the beginning as some injection drug. But now for the same drug target, now they move to the some orally available drug because of the reason that I talked about that.
Right.
Because in this pandemic and the outpatient the setting, that is very important. So injection drug rather than the injection drug, I think it's just the oral available drug is just very important in this case. So this drug is targeting some different viral protein. It's called the viral protease.
Right.
So the first drug and then now the second drug is very well known as a drug target for antiviral treatment, even for like HIV and hepatitis C. And I think I'm just expecting maybe these drugs should be a very good drug candidates if the clinical trials just accomplish very successfully.
Right, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that then. All right, Dr. Kim, as always, thank you very much for your insights. And Dr. Osman over in Malaysia, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Right, authorities here are looking to simplify the protocols involved in signing up for no-show doses in the near future. Having said that, thank you for watching. We'll see you again on Friday.